In the heart of Tornado Alley, a 67-year-old black widow counted her last $63 while staring at an eviction notice that gave her exactly 10 days to save her family farm. At her darkest hour, 12 escaped convicts pounded on her door during a Category F4 tornado. Without hesitation, she opened her door and shared her last meal. By sunrise, the rumble of 200 vehicles filled her driveway. Before we begin, where are you listening from? And if stories like this hit home, don't forget to subscribe. Martha Rodriguez stood in her kitchen, her dark, weathered hands trembling as she counted the bills one more time. 2 20s, a 10, 3 1s, 63s. She'd counted it 6 times now, as if her desperation might somehow multiply the money. The overhead light flickered, had been flickering for 3 months, casting shadows that danced across the faded yellow walls her husband Miguel had painted the summer before his last deployment. The foreclosure notice lay beneath the cash, its crisp white paper a stark contrast to the worn Formica countertop. 10 days. After 150 years and 4 generations of the Rodriguez family working this land, her great-grandfather had been one of the few black farmers to hold on to his property through Jim Crow, through the Depression, through decades when black landowners faced threats from neighbors who believed they didn't belong. She had 10 days. At 67, Martha had survived everything Oklahoma could throw at her: the tornadoes of '99 and 2013, the ice storm of '07, the drought that lasted 3 years and killed half the crops in the county. She'd survived Miguel coming back from his first 2 tours changed but whole, and then the folded flag when he didn't come back from the 3rd. She'd survived being one of the few black women to break into federal corrections, enduring comments about her race and gender from colleagues who thought she didn't belong in a man's world, let alone a white man's world. But this felt different. This felt like the end of everything. She shuffled to the living room, her slippers whispering against floors that Miguel's grandfather had laid in 1892, back when a black man owning 150 acres was considered not just unusual, but dangerous to those who preferred the old order. The room was nearly empty now. Miguel's leather recliner where he'd watched the History Channel, trying to forget Afghanistan, sold. The dining set where they'd hosted Sunday dinners for their church family, where she'd served her grandmother's cornbread recipe, sold. Her grandmother's upright piano, the one she'd played hymns on every Sunday morning, the one that had survived the Dust Bowl, sold. All that remained were 2 folding chairs from Goodwill and a card table with one wobbly leg that David had fixed twice with duct tape. The walls bore pale rectangles where family photos once hung. She'd kept only 3. Their wedding photo from 1979, where she wore her mother's dress, and Miguel looked so young in his army dress uniform before his final deployment, and David at his high school graduation, beaming from his wheelchair in cap and gown, valedictorian despite everything the world had thrown at him. The rest, 5 generations of Rodriguez family memories, baptisms and birthdays and Christmas mornings, had been sold to pay medical bills and property taxes. "Mama?" David's voice called from his room. "The storm's getting worse. Should I shut down my computer?" Martha walked to her son's door, each step a reminder of her arthritis that always acted up before bad weather. At 24, David had his father's keen intelligence and gentle spirit, trapped in a body that cerebral palsy had twisted but never defeated. His room was the only one still fully furnished. She'd sell her soul before she'd touch his things. "Finish your project first, baby," she said, watching him work. His fingers moved slowly but deliberately across the modified keyboard, designing a website for a dog groomer who'd promised him $50, maybe $70 if he added online booking. $70. Her brilliant boy, who'd scored perfect on his SATs, who could have been anything if life had been fairer, working for $70. The weather radio in the kitchen crackled with increasing urgency. "This is a particularly dangerous situation. F4 tornado confirmed on the ground, moving northeast at 45 miles per hour. If you are in the path of this storm, take shelter immediately." Martha looked out the window at the angry green sky, the color of bruised limes. The air had gone still and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. She'd seen plenty of storms in her years, but this one felt personal, like the sky was as angry as she was. She returned to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, mostly from habit. 2 eggs, a heel of bread, half a jar of Miguel's favorite salsa that she couldn't bear to throw away, and a can of Vienna sausages that expired last month. The food bank delivery wasn't until Friday if they made it to Friday. The wind suddenly died. Complete, eerie silence. Martha's blood turned to ice water. Every Oklahoman knew that silence. Her grandmother used to say it was God holding his breath before he screamed. Then she heard it. Not the tornado's roar, but desperate pounding on her front door. "Help! Please, anybody, help us!" Martha grabbed Miguel's baseball bat from beside the door, the Louisville Slugger from his high school days, when he'd been the only black kid on the varsity team, still taped where he liked to grip it. Through the peephole she saw them. Orange jumpsuits, bright as fire against the dark sky. Shackles. The unmistakable look of men caught between hell and high water. Convicts. A dozen of them, maybe more, pressed against her door like children fleeing the boogeyman. The one in front, a black man about 40 with a scar across his forehead and intelligent eyes, looked directly at the peephole. She could see him clearly in the strange stormlight. Strong features, a face that had seen hard times but hadn't surrendered to them. "Ma'am, I know what this looks like. I know what we are. But our transport van flipped. Guards are dead or dying. That tornado's going to kill us all if you don't open this door." His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Please, some of these boys are just kids." Martha's hand froze on the deadbolt. 30 years she'd worked at Fort Madison Federal Maximum Security. 30 years of murderers, rapists, armed robbers. She knew what orange meant. She knew what kind of men wore those jumpsuits. But then she saw the youngest one, a Latino boy who couldn't be more than 20, clutching a rosary, tears streaming down his face. His lips moved in prayer. "Santa Maria, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores." The same prayer Miguel whispered before every deployment. The same words she'd heard in the prison chapel from men who'd done terrible things but still hoped for mercy. Behind the convicts, she could see the tornado now, a massive black wedge grinding across the prairie, maybe a mile away, eating everything in its path like God's own eraser. "Mama," David called again. "What's happening?" Martha thought of Miguel. He'd been a soldier, had seen the worst humanity could do in 3 tours, but he'd also believed in grace. "Sometimes, baby," he used to say, "the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing." She thought of her $63, her empty refrigerator, her foreclosure notice. In 10 days she'd have nothing anyway. What did it matter if she lost it all tonight? She opened the door. The wind hit like a physical assault, nearly knocking her off her feet. The convicts surged inside, not aggressively but desperately, like drowning men reaching for a lifeline. "Basement!" Martha shouted over the rising wind. "Straight back, down the stairs, move!" They didn't need to be told twice. The men rushed past, shackles clanking against her floors. Up close she could smell them. Sweat, fear, institutional soap. She saw the details, gang tattoos, prison muscles, scars that told violent stories, but also the terror in their eyes that made them all equal in this moment. "Thank you, Mom," the leader said as he passed. "I'm Damon Rivers. Everyone calls me Day, I know—" "Later," Martha cut him off. "Move." As the last man entered, an older white convict with military tattoos, Martha slammed the door. Through the window, she could see the tornado clearly now, a grinding mountain of darkness that turned the afternoon into midnight. "Mom!" David's voice high with panic. "I'm coming, baby!" She ran to his room. He was trying to transfer from his desk chair to his wheelchair, but his hands shook too badly. "Mom, there are people here. I heard—" "I know, baby. No time. We need to go now." A massive figure appeared in the doorway, a white man with Aryan Brotherhood tattoos covering his arms, swastikas and iron crosses and all the symbols of hate. Martha moved instinctively between him and David, her black son, who represented everything this man's tattoos stood against. "Ma'am," the man said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "let me carry him. I can see he needs help." Every instinct screamed danger. This man, with his white supremacist tattoos, reaching for her black son. "Lady, that tornado's about to hit," he said urgently. "Please, let me help." Martha looked into his eyes. Ice blue, hard, the eyes of someone who'd done terrible things. But right now, also the eyes of someone trying to help. She had no choice. She nodded. The convict scooped David up with surprising gentleness, cradling him carefully. "I got you, buddy. Hold tight." They made it to the basement stairs just as the tornado hit. The sound was indescribable, like being inside thunder itself. The house shrieked and groaned above them. Windows exploded inward, glass singing through the air. Martha heard her kitchen cabinets ripping from the walls, 150 years of black family history being shredded in seconds. "Everyone down! Get down!" Damon Day Rivers commanded. The basement was small, meant for storage and tornadoes, not 14 people. Boxes of Miguel's uniforms, photo albums documenting 5 generations of black farmers, David's old medical equipment, all of it pressed in on them. The convicts arranged themselves instinctively, the younger ones pushed to the safest corners, the older ones taking the exposed positions. Ghost, the tattooed one they'd called by name, carried David gently to the farthest corner and placed him down like he was made of glass. Then, without a word, he turned and planted himself squarely between the boy and the coming collapse. 3 other convicts stepped in beside him, shoulder to shoulder, forming a human shield around David. Martha's mind couldn't process what she was seeing, an Aryan Brotherhood member protecting her black son. "Get under something solid," Martha shouted, dragging an old mattress toward David's corner. The house above them began to disintegrate, the sound of splintering wood mixed with the tornado's roar. A support beam cracked like a gunshot. "Ceiling's coming down," someone yelled. Day and Ghost threw themselves over David, just as a section of floor collapsed. Debris rained down, insulation, splintered wood, a lifetime of memories ground to dust. Both men grunted as beams struck their backs, but neither moved. The young Latino with the rosary was praying louder now, but his prayers were punctuated by action. He'd braced himself against a support post that was trying to buckle, holding it up through sheer will. Blood ran down his arms where the splintered wood cut into his palms. "What's your name, son?" Martha shouted over the storm. "Danny," he gasped. "Danny Vasquez." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry we brought this to your house." "You didn't bring the tornado, Danny. Just hold on." An older convict with a grey beard had positioned himself over Martha, shielding her with his body as debris fell. She could see military tattoos on his arms, 82nd Airborne, same as Miguel's unit. Why are you doing this?" she shouted. He met her eyes, and she saw something broken but not defeated. "Because it's right, ma'am, and it's been a long time since I got to do something that felt right." The lights died, plunging them into absolute darkness. Water pipes burst overhead, drenching them with freezing water. In the brief flashes of lightning through the destroyed ceiling, Martha saw something that would stay with her forever. These men, society's monsters, forming protective shells around her, and David with their own bodies. And most incredibly, Ghost, his arms inked in swastikas, now bleeding, shielded her black son from the storm with the same body he once used to serve hate. David was crying, terrified but trying to be brave. One of the convicts protecting him, a young man with kind eyes, started talking to him. "Hey buddy, I'm Jerome. Saw your computer setup upstairs. Pretty sweet rig. What kind of sites you build?" Even through his terror, David responded to the normal conversation. "Websites. Small business mostly." "Yeah? I was learning Python before. Maybe when this is over you can show me your work." Martha recognized the technique, giving someone something to focus on besides fear. She'd seen it in the prison, usually from counselors. That this young convict knew to do it instinctively touched something deep in her chest. The tornado seemed to stall directly over them, grinding away at everything Martha had ever known. She could hear her life being destroyed above, the kitchen where she'd taught David her grandmother's recipes, the bedroom where Miguel had drawn his last breath, the porch where her father had stood against the Klan in 1962. But down here in this cramped basement, something else was happening. These men, cast as monsters by society, were choosing to be human, and Ghost, his tattooed arms shaking with effort, braced himself under the collapsing beam to protect David, the son of a woman he'd once been trained to hate. A massive crash shook the foundation, the main support beam of the house falling. Ghost cried out as something heavy struck his shoulder, but he didn't move from his position over David. "Ghost," Day called. "You good, brother?" "Shoulders out," Ghost grunted through gritted teeth. "But I ain't moving. Kid needs cover." Martha stared at him in the darkness, the man with swastikas inked across his arms, calling her black son Kid, with something almost like affection. Danny's strength was failing. His arms shook violently as he held up the beam. Another convict, a Native American man with ritual scars, moved to help. "I got it, little brother." "No," Danny gasped. "Together." And they did. Two men from different worlds, holding up a collapsing ceiling to protect an old black woman they'd never met. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes, the roar began to fade. The tornado was moving on. "Is it over?" someone whispered. "I think so," Martha said. "Is everyone okay, David?" "I'm okay, Mom." His voice came from under the pile of protective bodies. "Mom, Ghost saved me. Ghost and Mr. Day saved me." Slowly, painfully, the convicts began to move. Ghost's shoulder was indeed dislocated. Danny's hands were shredded. Day had a gash on his forehead. The grey-bearded veteran had ribs that were probably cracked. Everyone was battered, but everyone was alive. Martha found her flashlight miraculously unbroken and surveyed the devastation. Water dripped through what used to be her floor. Through gaps in the debris, she could see stars. The tornado had taken her roof, her walls, her entire life above ground. "Jesus," someone whispered. "Your house." "It's just things," Martha said, though her heart was breaking. Everyone's breathing. That's what matters. Ghost was sitting up now, cradling his dislocated shoulder, staring at David with an expression Martha couldn't read. "Kid," he said roughly. "You okay? You hurt anywhere?" "No, sir," David replied. "You protected me." Ghost laughed, but it sounded like crying. "A black kid calling me sir, after what I've been, after what I believed." He looked at his tattoos, visible even in the dim light. 20 years of hate, and it took a tornado to show me how wrong I was. "You're not your tattoos," David said simply. "You're the man who saved me." Ghost broke then, sobbing like Martha had never seen a grown man cry. "Mom," Day said, "we need to talk about what happens next. Emergency services will come. They'll find us." "I know." "You could be in serious trouble. Harboring escaped felons." Martha laughed, a bitter sound. "Mr. Rivers, in 10 days the bank is taking this farm. My husband is dead. I have $63 to my name. Or I did. It's probably in Kansas now. What exactly do I have left to lose?" The convicts exchanged glances. In the flashlight's beam, she could see them really looking at her for the first time, this small, elderly black woman who'd opened her door to them without hesitation. $63? Day asked quietly. "And whatever food was in my refrigerator, which wasn't much. And you still let us in, fed us what you had." "You were people in a storm," Martha said simply. "That's all that mattered." The grey-bearded convict approached slowly. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something. My name is James Mitchell, and I think I know you." Martha studied his face in the flashlight beam, something familiar about those eyes. "Mitchell," she breathed. "Fort Madison. You were on suicide watch 15 years ago. And you were the guard who cut me down, who sat with me all night, talking about your husband's deployment, your son's struggles. You told me about being one of the only black women working federal max, how you had to be twice as good to get half the respect." The memory flooded back. Mitchell, destroyed by guilt, wanting to end it all. She'd spent hours talking to him through the cell door. "You got your degree," Martha said, remembering. "Philosophy. You helped me get into the education program. Told me something I never forgot. Your worst day doesn't define you. What you do tomorrow does." "Oh my God." Danny Vasquez spoke up, staring at Martha. Rodriguez. Your C.O. Rodriguez. The black lady guard who... When I was detoxing. When I wanted to die. The kid who swallowed the balloons, Martha said, the memory clicking. They burst. You almost died. Would have died if you hadn't noticed. You rode with me to the hospital. Stayed with me even though your shift was over. One by one, connections emerged. Jerome had been in her unit, terrified and trying to act tough. She'd brought him books, told him about David's success despite his disability. The Native American man, Joseph Crow Dog, remembered her fighting for his religious rights. Even some who hadn't been directly under her supervision knew her reputation. The black woman guard who treated everyone with dignity. This is impossible, Ghost said. Of all the houses in Oklahoma, a black family's house. Not impossible, Joseph said quietly. Sacred. The spirits put us where we needed to be. Ma'am, Day said, I need to make some calls. He pulled out a contraband cell phone. People need to know about C.O. Rodriguez. As Day made calls, Martha began treating injuries. Ghost couldn't meet her eyes. I need to tell you what I'm in for, he said quietly. I killed a man. Beat him to death. He was black. I thought I was protecting the white race. His voice broke. 20 years of hate, and tonight I protected a black family. Tonight your son called me Sir. People can change, Martha said simply. I got cancer. Terminal. Maybe 2 months left. I wasted my whole life on hate, and now you have 2 months to be different, Martha said. That's more than some people get. Dawn revealed complete devastation. The tornado had erased everything above ground. Her house, her barn, the equipment shed, all gone, scattered across 3 counties. But something else was happening. Vehicles were arriving. First one pickup truck, then another, then a steady stream. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, all carefully navigating the debris-strewn driveway. The first person to reach them was a black woman in nursing scrubs, picking her way through the wreckage. Jerome? She called. Jerome, baby? Are you down there? Keisha? Jerome's voice cracked. What are you? Day Rivers called. Said C.O. Rodriguez needed help. Said the Angel of Fort Madison was in trouble. They emerged from the basement to find Martha's destroyed farm transforming into something impossible. People everywhere. Black, white, Latino, Native, Asian. All united by one thing. C.O. Rodriguez had treated them or their loved ones with dignity. Mrs. Rodriguez? A well-dressed black woman approached. I'm Kamisha Rivers, Day's sister. He told me what happened, who you are. More people approached. Ex-convicts, their families, community members who'd heard the story, a white contractor who'd been in her unit, a Latino teacher whose brother she'd protected, a black lawyer who credited her with saving his life. You're the black woman who made it in federal max, one said, who showed us that strength didn't mean cruelty. A man in an expensive suit approached. Mrs. Rodriguez? I'm William Foster, attorney, former inmate. You helped me access the law library. I've been collecting money for years, the C.O. Rodriguez Fund. We all contributed, waiting to pay you back. $127,000 so far. Martha's legs gave out. $127,000? Every person you helped, every life you touched. We never forgot the black woman guard who saw us as human. The 12 convicts were taken into custody, but gently, respectfully. The story had already gone viral. Escaped convicts protecting a black family. An Aryan Brotherhood member shielding a disabled black youth. At the emergency hearing that afternoon, held in a tent on Martha's property, Judge Patricia Harrison listened to testimony. David spoke via laptop. Ghost protected me with his body. A man with swastika tattoos bled for me, a black kid. That's not just heroism, that's redemption. The judge's decision was unprecedented. Immediate transfer to minimum security, expedited parole hearings, and for Ghost, immediate compassionate release. Mr. Ghost, she said, you have 2 months to live. Spend them as the man you became in that basement, not the man you were before. As the convicts were led away, Ghost stopped at Martha and David. I'm going to find his family, he said. The black man I killed. I'm going to apologize. Try to make something right before I die. He looked at David. "You called me sir. No black person ever... Thank you." By evening, the farm hosted hundreds. The foundation for a new house was already poured. Donations had reached $200,000. The story was national news: the black widow who opened her door, the white supremacist who protected her son, the tornado that revealed humanity in the most unlikely places. 6 months later, Martha stood in her new, fully accessible home. The Rodriguez Ranch Re-Entry Center was taking its first residents. David was walking with just a cane now, running a web design company that hired ex-convicts. Ghost had died 2 months after the tornado, but not before meeting with his victim's family, a black family who forgave him. His last letter to Martha: "You and David showed me that hate was just fear in costume. I died free from both. Thank you for letting me protect your son. It was the first right thing I'd done in 20 years. The sign at the ranch entrance read, "Rodriguez Ranch, where second chances grow. Sometimes redemption comes in storms." Martha kept the foreclosure notice, framed next to a photo from the morning 200 people came to rebuild. The caption: "The house that dignity built, twice." The storm had taken everything but revealed the truth, that 30 years of treating people with dignity, regardless of their crimes or color, had built something no tornado could destroy. A community of redemption that crossed every line society drew. As she walked through the ranch each evening, checking on residents who were rebuilding their lives, she thought about that night, about the choice she'd made at her door between fear and love. She'd chosen love, and love, it turned out, had been choosing her all along, in every book she'd brought to a lonely inmate, every hour she'd spent talking someone through crisis, every time she'd seen a human being where the world saw only a criminal. The storm had taken her house, but revealed her true home, in the hearts of hundreds who'd learned that dignity, once given, grows like seeds in good soil. Even soil that's been through storms, especially soil that's been through storms. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.